We'll be starting with this Lamrim yoga on page 7 when it comes up on the screen.
All right. Sorry.
From the heart of the Savior,
the people of God is enemy and come, extremely white flesh bird.
King of Dharma,
Omniscient Los Angeles, please come here together with your sons.
in the sky,
Performing the line from Lotus and Moon, favorite Guru Guru stars with delight.
supreme
Imperial merit on the line of faith, please
your holy
mind has the intelligence that understands the full extent of objects to be known.
your holy
Speech with its excellent explanations is an ear ornament with those of good fortune. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful with glory renowned, meaningful to see, hear, and remember by prostrate.
pleasing to you,
Glorious flowers, fragrant incense, light, scented waters, and so forth. Oceans with cloud-like offerings, both texture and
radiantly emanated, I offer to you the supreme field of merit. Whatever non-virtue of body, speech, and mind, especially those
opposite to the three vows that have collected from beginningless time, I confess each and every one with fervent regret from my heart.
You strive for much
Learning and practice in this degenerate age, and make your freedoms and riches as meaningful. By abandoning the eight worldly concerns, Saviour, we sincerely rejoice
in your extensive deeds. Perfect pure holy gurus
from the living clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of Dharma fire. Please let fall away the profound extensions of Dharma upon the receptacle of those being distributed exactly as they need.
May whatever virtue I have collected
Benefit the teachings and all transmigrated beings,
and in particular
may it cause the essence of perfect pure laws and justice teachings to shine forever.
Sashi by the merits of having offered this mandala to Lama Sankara and his two sons, may I,
And all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of victorious one,
who have the morality of an eminent
the pure way of life, was courageous in the extensive conduct of the sons of victorious
one,
and accomplishing over the two stages of freedom, bliss, and emptiness.
by the force of having fervently requested in this way,
Although beings of white light are emitted from the heart of the perfect pure Father and Sons, and combining into one, enter my crown. White nectar, the colour of milk, flows from the opening of the tube of white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harm, negative karmas, obscurations, and their ignorance without exception.
my body becomes as pure and clear as crystal. And then page 13, the 5-line Miksema verse, which is in the middle there. Meek me se we tension chen resi, dreaming kimper wampo jampa yan, dupum baru chung se samweja, kanchen kipe sugen som kapa, losan trapishan la sowade. Meek me se we tension chen resi, dreaming kimper wampo jampa yan, dupum baru chung se samweja, Kanchen kipe sungyen sungkapa, losan trape shabla sowade. Nigme sewe techen chenezi, dreaming kimpe wambo shampayan, jopum balu chonsen samveka. Kanchen kipe sungyen sungkapa, losan trape shabla sowade.
Sangye Chodan Soke Chodan La Chachu Pade Dani Kelsunchi Dani Chushen Dibe Sonam Dola Peche Sankin Drupasho Sangye Chodan Soke Chodan La Chachu Pade Dani Kelsunchi Dani Chushen Dibe Sonam Dola Peche Sankin Drupasho Sanji Chodan Soke Chodan La Chachu Pade Dani Kelsunchi Dani Chushen Dibe Sonam Dola Peche Sankin Drupasho Kanki Tsultrim Zonye Tawa Tongche Tongche Chere Tangi Shuni Tenze Kodun Tela Tongche No Good morning, everyone. It's done already. Sunday, Taiwan, Nimbulan, Chetua said, Chetan, suggestion, the liturgic.
We're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation on the status of the path to enlightenment. This is his middling presentation, and currently we've been looking at the exhortation that he's been making for us to make the most out of our precious human rebirth with freedoms and richnesses. to take the essence of our freedoms and richnesses.
그러다 이제 당가당가들이야 지금만 진행이 매봐요. 괜히 당분내는 이 천남다 주세비 가부슈 로스 라나서 그때 토모메바니 차당기 생활이야 공진 매봐서 안치 규제 강라버디 신리 아니 또그 당소리 같이 나양 딘지지 쳐야 땅에만 돌리지 깨어 땡긴도 막쭉 뭐냐기 상무기에 때마서 가고 있자 아니 딱 산지 장소 상무로 땅가는 소리에 딱 꿈만 거라서.
So an exhortation is made at the beginning of this section to make the most out of our human life. And Geshe says that for people like us, or someone like him, without someone encouraging him to do so, it's hard to be solely motivated to do it, in a sense that since time without beginning and up until now, we have created those habits in the mind stream in which we focus on whatever we can get in this lifetime only. So whatever pleasure, happiness, comfort, and so forth, which are limited to this lifetime only, we're habituated with pursuing mainly that. And it's when we get so distracted by those affairs of this life that it seems that we pay no attention whatsoever, or hardly any attention to a deeper sense of happiness and comfort that exceeds the purpose of this lifetime only. So here we can think of not only Lama Tsongkhapa is making that request or exhortation to us, but together with the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, all of us are calling us to make the most out of our freedoms and richnesses.
다 고만당당로디 지기다 근데 돈줬다고 인가이나 랭신 뜻무바 딱고바 해제시 미신이 해제니 미신이 간지 아니 직랭이 돌아야 상무땅 니버 맹이 진바이나 곧내줄로가로스 고마 제나야 벤도스키요 말로스 당나도 디 마힘바 텔 도데 아니 미 리지네 그냥 비리게 원래 람들이 내 때문에 람들이 왜일까 아니 소소에나 야지 아니 어머 창상상까 될이야 아니 컨트롤이 캐버를 타고지 간지 미 류람들이 아니 위덴티 아니 대단한 제거야지 에 마스고 계신분들 제와스.
And when such an exhortation is made to us as human beings, we can also compare a situation to the situation of other living beings. Like, for example, where such an exhortation be made to an animal that cannot understand human language or cannot understand the meaning, it doesn't matter how much that animal would be exhorted, there would be not much progress that would be happening, right? So looking at our situation, not only we were born as human beings, but we have all the full characteristics that make it possible for us to fully develop our mind. Our faculties are fully developed. And as such, it is so important to make sure that we make the most out of our freedoms and richnesses.
아니 데이터치 그게 단 연습 공수 제가 여신도 아니 디파샤나 아니 지 아니 셀디콘 제도 뷰데디 베마스고 방부 대양 비기지 노친중 로진바니다 다 카메 요로지 와 이내야 이제 제가 나서 빼는 나타다 이제 제가 나서 조사는 아니 이내야 단도직 아니 세들에 유르무 대유비 상로로지 케체 아니 세 디코니 체도지 벤조다 논조다 지 아니 세 디비 땀해가 지금 걸어야 아니 프로데바티 하창그 간지 메세 디 추소스 줘야 겐소로지 차기여버디 하마고야 빼마스고 아니 로컴부니 상기 창성주 세바이나 아니 민지 기고에 율 차기 여버디 나란서 딘디치 뭐 하모고 와디야 탑교래도 asra.
Particularly now that we have the tradition of the stasis of the path of enlightenment that is available to us in our study. So we can listen to the teachings, we can put them into practice. So particularly in this point in time when we have the ability to do that, if we set that aside and be completely involved with chasing after things that belong to this lifetime only, that would be a great pity. And we go through different phases in our life. When you're young, you can say that, well, what can you do? There are so many things that excite your senses that you don't think of making the most out of your freedoms and richnesses. But then when you reach the half point of your life, Geshe says that, for example, for him, he's no longer that young. He's reached half of his lifetime. If he says that if he's still being involved with pursuing things that belong to this lifetime only, reputation and possessions and resources and social interactions and so forth, then not understanding how it is a waste of time in terms of not being able to invest your time and energy in pursuing the status of the path of enlightenment. If we behave in such a way, we're objects of compassion for Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. They behold us with that sense of compassion in thinking how pitiful it is, how unfortunate it is that we don't see how our time is being wasted.
Sinza dan maranzola ya mi lu bi taji joji tan lu sing di tobiya ba gyasa gyatamba ra manzu sozu ngone druba yema ani churche chaje sang yoba di gyasa gyatamba yimba izas ani ta di tolaya ra di tolaya beba chi matu ya di kar res launi nganzu gi 다 마시비 온 거지. 그 아니 개원 로고 예비 소와 내바이자 아니 세 리참을 야지 지바이 가랑 지기 삼비 상도디 키에디 미시비 온 거디 페마스바 더 시무레샤스로
We certainly have attained freedoms and richnesses, the 8 freedoms, the 10 richnesses. We certainly have attained them. And we have all the conducive conditions which are necessary for practice. So if we do not make effort in doing that on account of not seeing, not understanding that we have all these conducive conditions, we will still continue to go from one lifetime to the next over a succession of lifetimes. When we don't understand that, when we focus only on what we can get in this lifetime, we become complacent, thinking that what we have now is just enough, it is sufficient. This is a lack of understanding of the fact that we go from one lifetime to the next, and therefore focusing only on what we can get in this lifetime is not enough.
केवल दिन से पहले खर्चा करे सेगी थोपदी मंजल गुद असरा चे खेलने क्या नो मालने क्या नो मंजल दिन अनि से पेवदा शिवदा खर्चा करे से जावनी नि चिकम मेवा चादु योबा न अनि तना थकिल तुजिम डेमोक्रेटिक 단딘 잠블린다는 거야. 너니 또 주게서지 조사되냐. 아니 단다 임바이나 다 상기기 손도서 지원디기 원내기 비기 남주용이 미지 임바이나 이용 모창이 수치가 매봤어. 다 딘지 지기 아니 깨워 담아 지기 아니 깨워니 깨워준 로고탄피 가진 손으로 딘지 티오고 고도 상도스 당에 삼바.
In brief, when we think of transferring from this lifetime to the next, which means that at some point in time, this life will come to an end and we will move on to our next lifetime, it give rise to a certain question in our mind. What will occur to me in my future life? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a religious question or Dharmic question. If you believe in the Dharma, if you do not believe in the Dharma, it can still occur to you, that thought might still occur to you, what will occur to me after my death? So we need to think about it. If we don't think about it, then there might be some drawbacks or some things that will not work out properly for us. So the Buddha spoke about it. The Buddha that had skillful means and was imbued with a great sense of concern for others taught 2,600 years ago that we do go from life after life. So then if you allow yourself to use your wisdom or your intelligence, Geshe feels that you'll find some of the teachings of the Buddha to be enticing, to be really interesting. So then, thinking about it, what then is the reason that the Buddha taught of transitioning from one lifetime to the next?
Dodan di tole ya tusam shisha was Moldove. And it same di and Togu Tamsum tole ya, the Shenja Cheni, and Tizutan Shavachi, Pishim, the Yomaras, right? Then Kebab Nam Jiji Kunzu, Kinji Kachin Chigos, right?
And it's not that the Buddha, the Bhagavan, was the only one who spoke about it like that. Also, when you look at the great masters that came from the Nalanda tradition, the Indian tradition, they also spoke about the continuity of life after life. They did not promote an attitude that was focused on whatever you can get in this life, as far as food and clothing and social interactions and fame and reputation and so forth. None of these were the sole point of concern. They were speaking of what you need to think of as far as the transition or continuation from one lifetime to the next.
Mumba nyon doda, teletembi chabanyon, teletembi shedan nyon doda. See this Korea song down there, and chaban chill dredge model, kanji, send my give a man dredge model, and give they would child kabu shuchi. But the rich readers, the ding of the Tindichi Sojoana, Kyo Chiman Chima Gun, and David Tavaya. Sometimes Corvaina and Chardon Laya Donenchi, Yungioris. Chardon la Donenchi, Kazu Donenchi, Cheva, Tsugi, and Kivrich. Kanjing of the Kivu Durio, Duriomas, that Tatuna digital Drogo was a
But then when you start to think about it, you can use that contemplation in order to make your anger and attachment abate. They reduce as you think of future lifetimes, going from one lifetime to the next. Anger is reduced, attachment is reduced, and the basis of anger and attachment, ignorance, is also reduced. So if ignorance is becoming weaker, your anger will also be weakened. Your attachment will also be weakened, which means that your mind will be made happier. So when we consider the reduction of our afflictive states of mind, anger, attachment, and so forth, and how it will affect our happiness and well-being from life after life, we can see that there will be, if we think of the transitioning from one lifetime to the next, going from one lifetime to the next and the one after that, and all along we will still continue to reduce the power of our afflictive states of mind. It means that we will go from one state of happiness or well-being to a better state of happiness and well-being. So when you see that, you become more encouraged or enthused to take up what you need to do and to cast aside what you ought not to do in order to bring about a greater degree of happiness and well-being and to reduce anger, attachment, and so forth over a succession of lifetimes.
These are that Chadanga don't chivach to one, the Chungumat, the Nantu Chigonza, Chungumadi, and Chadang Monsongi, Nimbo Drohechiki, Tolia, Samo Koreana, Churius, Chadang Monsonia, Suzuki, Chadang Monsonia, Kanya Minerva Mase, Man Drovino, Shuk Cher Dredge Chagavano, and Lu Nambu Karim Kartian Devania, and Sure, Momadi, Remulas, Mother Jabsum Sion Livia, and Jab Tembo Sanjisa, Jabu, Sure Conjoti, Ya, and Golam in Shadows, Numu Sebi Sabatan, Sabat the Public Tap, Lam Nimutelia, Sure Wood Shadows, is a touch, Moma Cherry, the Messati, Goba Angulaki Tap, and Lam Ya, you two do them. This on does ra.
So in light of that, what we do need to limit, what we do need to restrict and reduce our anger, attachment, and so forth in our own mind. And this is the essence of an actual and a real Dhamma practice. For a genuine Dhamma practice to occur, it needs to be antidoting our anger and attachment and so forth. If we do that, it means that we are practicing the Dhamma. If we do not address our afflictions, anger, attachment, and so forth, if they are not reduced, sometimes we find that they are on the increase. They're becoming stronger and stronger. So physically, we might present some gestures or some physical behavior that might imply as if we do practice the Dhamma. But if it occurs that our afflictive states of mind, anger, attachment, and so forth are increasing, we're not actually practicing, because an actual Dhamma practice should be addressing our afflictive states of mind. And as such, when you look at, for example, the refuges, we regard the Buddha as being the teacher of refuge, whereas the actual refuge is the Dhamma. And the actual Dhamma refuge are true paths and true cessations that we develop in our own mind stream, in our own mental continuum, so that we have true cessations, which are the cessations or the elimination of suffering and the cause of suffering, anger, attachment, and so forth. And the true paths that we use in order to enact those true cessations in our mind stream. These are for us the actual antidotes to our own afflictive states of mind. And if we develop them, if we enact them, it means that we do an actual or real Dhamma practice.
Rikokala Nantachi Kenzato Chalgas, Hansna, number something Chu Jubudi, and Gambo in Soyas, Gambo. That Gabsu Drosa, we use Gabu Kunjo Sumato, Shivach Shayamaras. Conjo Sum Goshe Jawi, Sanji, Gambo Remoto, Gamu Martas. Gamudi, and Golum Chudi, Gamusha. And Gindu Kunjo said, it kept to be Dadolasha. That D and Shugi Jugo, and it Shugi made the Masona, Lunan, Gorodi, and Dichagados. On the D Tarasi and the Yana Sologic Shachi, and the Mahimbi Chusachimuchi Chech, Yoris, so mean Mundos. In a young Kalkolia. Camdrum Denguari, Shokin Denguari, Nigun Dengu, Denguar Denia, Camdrum Mumati, Mashi Soris. And Dilichavana, the Tizotrola Soris, Zedasra.
It can sometimes work in a strange way, in that for us, going for refuge is the entry gate to the Buddha Dhamma. When we go for refuge, we enter into the ranks of Buddhists. And as such, only 3 objects of refuge were taught. No 4 objects of refuge. So it's not that there is a 4th object of refuge. Only 3 objects of refuge were taught. So it's quite strange, because we rely upon the Buddha, but we regard the Buddha as being only the teacher. The teacher of refuge, whereas the actual refuge is the Dhamma. True paths and true cessations. And the Sangha refuge are the assistants that we rely upon in order to cultivate that. So if we think about those distinctions and through that we go for refuge, that for us forms the gateway entering into the Dhamma. But sometimes in our behavior, we regard refuge as if it's only a secondary thing. This is a branch of an actual practice, whereas the real practice is something else. So if we regard refuge to be incidental, to be just a branch of something, whereas the actual Dhamma practice is something else, this is an indication that we have a certain level of misunderstanding, a deep level of misunderstanding with respect to what makes us Buddhist. So it can work up in a strange way, because when you take up Buddhism, you do some recitation. So you might recite refuge in the morning, and you might recite the formula for refuge in the evening. You can recite all those different things without really knowing that still, in terms of developing the actual refuge in your mind, you haven't really hit the mark. If you consider refuge to be just a branch of something, whereas the actual practice is something else, you might be reciting the formula for refuge, but in that sense, it's not really working out for you.
아니 뉴문 독수 세비기 세자들이야 고버시게레스 다디 톱시 탑 뉴비 님보 이다 ninjongdang chanjugu semdang ani toni to tawa so didi and lam gibiba ro goba thoji tap chanju thoji tap ta dimti la ya ani kaso ta nyamna mo shubadi ta chu chibi tendi dire dosra ta dimti chu di ani ting sab yachi chu di ani che tungi gi tendi Kali Yorislamdi, Taji Jujitsami, me Luden de Yor Modovi, and then Droshi, so Kangiya, Nanzo Nanjingi, Chernanda Jun Tubi, and Niba Yushi Yomaris. There's another delude Yorinsa, that tea and Tola Paninus, delude Rabi Kalaya, Lu Pijichin, Chernanda Chigudus, Kuma Chedam Direshas.
So then in terms of the true paths that we develop in a mind stream, which is for us the actual refuge, right? So the Buddha is not the actual refuge. The actual refuge for us is the Dhamma. We develop paths that bring about the elimination of anger, attachment, and ignorance, just three poisonous afflictions. And true paths are the methods for actualizing, for activating those cessations, eliminations of our anger, attachment, and ignorance. And the way to do that is summarized in the three principal aspects of the path, which presents us the quintessence of the path that we need to develop. So the determination to emerge from cyclic existence is the first principle. The second is bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. And the third is the wisdom of emptiness, the wisdom of selflessness. If we develop these three, which are included in true paths, we will have the methods, the means for actualizing true cessations in a mind stream. So in that sense, the Dhamma becomes, on one hand, vast and extensive, and on the other hand, deep, very deep. We have the basis for putting it into practice and developing true paths and true cessations. We have the basis for we have attained freedoms and richnesses. And if we look at other states of existence, other living beings around us, no one else has those freedoms and richnesses that constitute the foundation for developing true paths and true cessations. So only we as human beings have that basis, that potential to do it. So we have that potential, and if we don't use that potential, if we waste it, that would be a great shame and great pity. We have to put it to use, and this is the exhortation that is made here at this point in time in the text. Lama Tsongkhapa is making an exhortation for us to make the most out of our freedoms and richnesses.
This is the cousin something that must show in this rock. And to Drugoris, Druguris, said Drugoris, Tadanin the Drugoris, this shit soon somebody something. She beats in the Drugu dance, Lord the Dao Shangama Mandra, Chimap Chimap to the Chonin Velo Goveris, then you knew the Drugu doing soon to check out chocos. 대단한 치워주면 내 양주 왠지 친소지 모두 시험을 차오세 생성되래.
So with that in mind, Geshe will now go back to the text and look at the point that we left off in our previous session. So as we're looking at the exhortation that is made to make the most out of freedoms and richnesses, Lama Tsongkhapa in his text explains the method of meditation with the 4 special features. So we read through that section in the previous section. So it says that when you think of freedoms and endowments, or freedoms and richnesses, you get to the point that you think that you need to practice the Dharma to accomplish the Dharma. You have the ability to do so. Also, you need to do it in this life. And the 4th point is you need to do it right now. And it says because the time of death is uncertain. Lama Tsongkhapa says the 3rd stops the laziness of abandoning it, thinking I should practice the Dharma in later lives. And the 4th one counteracts the laziness of not engaging in it, thinking it needs to be accomplished in this life, but although it was not accomplished in earlier years, months, and days, it is enough to accomplish it or to practice it much later on. It is permissible to make them into 3, subsuming those 2 under the need to accomplish it quickly or to practice it quickly. Like that, remembering death can also be linked in here. In any case, since this is a lengthy topic, it will be explained below.
대들 고르나 쏘는 삼나스 루이 코치 할시바터 삼 대선 문은 단주기 치다와 임바다 내가 그 타비고 괜찮아 교단 기비고 니카츠 듀디 치다를 삼바리 할시바니 나무 고모스 따라.
The Lama Tsongkhapa continues in differentiating sustained mode of practice, in making 2 points with respect to that. How to contemplate from various points of view and how to contemplate it in particular. It says first off that since the mind is more significantly subdued if you contemplate from various points of view, you should contemplate as explained above. If you cannot do that much, you should subsume them under 3. Okay. So it says, the first one is what the entity of the freedoms and endowments is. Second is the manner in which they are greatly meaningful from a temporary and ultimate point of view. And the 3rd point is how difficult they are to find from the viewpoint of cause and effect. You should take up each of the points explained above as they suit you and meditate.
Lamrim gondang zu rodi chungna lamrim ki sajje di thonma ani chi gom tu baina tab debu lela upeyores taina ya ani rimbuche duschion digi nyobo chaga tu baina ani chi yonde shigi makta bi thonma ani gosheni tenso ni chene ani ju mulu sonju parte ni ko ani Kanjan Zangu Tonma, and Modrichi, and indeed Ton Gombaina, the young bears, and Dinan Pigilach, and Goshini Denser, and Tancho Tencho, and Chigni Nikawa, and Jiglawa, the deal touching the towers with 2 sin Kanji, and Yonde should give Manima, and Yana doing the tonic, and Lamrom Gondanski. chanzang yingo za ta di manzu chikau kau la chiri so chikau kau la ani dawa khaji le yusha ndi mayimba nima takpa gongo ya chikredo as nima takpa gongo ya chikanji.
So if you want to meditate on the steps of the path of enlightenment, this is the way to do it. So you can use this meditation manual that Lama Tsongkhapa presents here as a basis for your meditation on the steps of the path of enlightenment. However, this text is long, and if you feel that if you want to sustain it in your meditation session, it will become rather long, and that will make you a bit sluggish or lethargic and so forth. You can then use more abridged presentations of the states of the path of enlightenment. Like, for example, Lama Tsongkhapa taught the foundation of all good qualities, which presents a succinct explanation of the states of the path of enlightenment, beginning with relying upon a spiritual teacher. So it gives you the first topic, relying upon a spiritual teacher. Then the second point, freedoms and richnesses. So you think of how you have the 8 sets of freedoms, the 10 sets of endowments or richnesses that are very difficult to find, that are easily lost, which brings you to the meditation on death and impermanence. So in that way, you can continue sequentially through reading texts such as the foundation of all good qualities, and it constitutes a presentation for your meditation right from the very beginning, the way to rely upon a spiritual teacher, all the way up to the attainment of the state of union. And it also includes the 7 limbs of, you can do that, in conjunction with the 7 limbs of practice, so that it will then give you the ability to have a complete meditation practice on the steps of the path of enlightenment. Now, if you want to do that, it's good to develop consistency in your practice, because if you do it every once in a while, you pick it up, you do it for some time, then you set it aside and you don't look at that meditation for a long time, then you take it up again. It will be hard to develop deeper meditation qualities on that basis. But if you become consistent, do it daily, where you review the steps of the path and meditate on them. In stage by stage or bit by bit, you will develop the qualities of those meditations.
That the Nanduchi Tenja Lega Damosi, Nanduchi Lega singing GP, that Tenja Lega Rasus Lagdi, Gasul Piki dos, in a Nandu Tenja Lega di, and in Yamataba Pigi, Goshin Tunzini, Chilinta, Kanji, Getson Dombane, Chanju Semi Dombane, and this song of the Dombane, and it's one of the so singing the Mijin by now, and it. Tenja Lega di so Lamrim Kong.
So it's good to develop consistency and stability in your practice. It's like, in some sense, some people like to be permanent employees rather than being a casual worker. When you get to be, when you get certain stability in your place of work, it normally makes you happy. So also, this is the type of consistency that we want to develop in our practice. So we take up a practice of the steps of the path of enlightenment, such as on the basis of the foundation of all good qualities, and we do it daily. And the practice of the meditation on the graduated path of enlightenment then also becomes for us a foundation for taking up certain modes of ethical discipline. Like, for example, at some point we might decide to take up a monastic vow, become a monk or a nun, or we might decide to take up the bodhisattva vow or the tantric vow. So for many of us, we do have those different sets of vows in our mind stream. So if we then want to develop consistency in our practice and incorporating all those elements into a consistent spiritual practice, the foundation for that is the steps of the path of enlightenment.
Diri Dinza Didi Dinta Cousin on the Tanjur di Tenchewa, that Tanjur Nikawase, that Nikawase di Tajin Junjitsan Luden Tapen and Manzu Top David Ludi and Yanga, and then it's 7 Yanga Tahara Miluji Nen Chojos, Reves Lavana, Sawani Mares, Kalakapu Shure said. 니까와서 대승도 그 이바 카레스나 다진 조주상이 류디 다가스기 규메 게메를 때는 총샤고 말을 왔어 규진지를 때는 용고도 왔어 인자 아니 규톤 상담하이나 다진 조주상이 류디 규톤 상담하이나 하장이 니까와지 나다 나도 셈을 때와이나 하장이 니까와지 그래샤스
So then when you take up this meditation topic of the steps of the path of enlightenment, which is about recognizing first of our freedoms and richnesses, and the next point is to recognize how difficult it is to find such freedoms and richnesses. We also look at our attitude with respect to the current body that we have. So sometimes we have this leisurely approach to it in thinking that it will be so easy to find such a human body again in my next life. I'll easily find this opportunity again, which is not the case at all. It is so hard to find such a human body again in the future. This human body is not obtained randomly. It is not produced from no causes. It is not produced from no conditions whatsoever. It's not a random occurrence, but it needs certain causes and conditions to be created to find such a precious human bodies that we have now. And those causes and conditions are hard to find.
캬버도 단주 성 터발라 수좀 넘어 다고 시소 진소지 초지 만남 주만들이 손저서 게자만부 시고나 규테다고 저바이 신도니원 하이스 라 신도니원 하이 텔레폰이 제브 덴주 때 제다 캬버 와 니가와 삼바오스.
So looking at the meditation outline for freedoms and richnesses, we've covered the first one in which we recognize the freedoms and richnesses. Now, then looking at how to contemplate that in particular, we contemplate the difficulty in obtaining freedoms and endowments from the point of view of the cause. So it says first, the difficulty in obtaining the freedoms and endowments from the viewpoint of the causes. Generally speaking, even for the attainment of a mere happy migration, it is necessary to perform one of the pure virtues such as ethics. In particular, for the attainment of the complete freedoms and endowments, you need many roots of virtue, such as getting hold of a basis through pure ethics, reinforcing it through generosity and the like, and making connections by means of stainless prayers. Right? So the very basis for freedoms and endowments is pure ethical discipline. In that case, it becomes apparent that those who accomplish such causes, are very few, which is why you should think that proportionally the effect, the general and particular basis of fortunate freebirds, is difficult to obtain.
때는 성당와이나 남수 잠분인도 나와야 나는 중앙을 초대야 때대와이나 미 초치고를 때대와이나 같이 미망 제비기 조를 통과되느냐 잠분링 디톡에 아니 심진 찔라파 들어와이나 먼저 미 장가태야지 뭐또 매왔어 저 아니 뒤주직디 장매봐 열었어.
We've looked at the section that explains the contemplation of freedoms and endowments from the point of view of the causes that produce them, and reached the conclusion that therefore it is difficult to find freedoms and richnesses. But you can also look at that from the viewpoint of the results and understand how difficult it is to find freedoms and richnesses. So when you only look at ourselves as human beings, and it seems that since the number of human beings in this world is on the increase, that it's not that hard to find freedoms and richnesses. But then when you look at it in a comparative way, in a relative way, considering other living beings, we might have some fluctuation in the number of human beings, but still the number is just a fraction of other living beings that live on this planet. When you consider the numbers of animals, insects, and so forth, really, the number of human beings is quite smaller comparing to the number of other living beings. And particularly when you consider that in terms of numbers in a relative way, yeah, we have obtained a happy state of rebirth or a pleasant state of rebirth. And it seems that now we have around 7 billion people living on this planet. And when you start considering the number of people that do practice Dharma purely and genuinely, probably will come down to only a few thousands of them. So then in a comparative way, when you look at it from the viewpoint of the result, actually there are very few cases. So you can think of the numbers of those who practice real and genuine Dharma practice. So at least those who wish to do so. So we certainly those who wish to practice the Dharma. And in no way we undermine, we look down on our fortunate situation, how lucky we are that at least we have the wish to do that, because that in itself requires so many causes and conditions that we have had to cultivate before in previous lives. Many causes and conditions came together in order to produce the wish to put it into practice. So it's not a random occurrence. It's not that it has arisen by itself without causes and conditions. It is a result of so much merit that has been accumulated over many lifetimes before. So then when you contemplate your particular type of rebirth, you have obtained a human body, you have freedoms and you have richnesses. When you consider that from the viewpoint of the causes that produce that, from the point of view of the effect, you can then appreciate how rare your situation is. It is so hard to find. So then considering that from the viewpoint of the result, it says the difficulty in obtaining the freedoms and endowments from the point of view of the result. You meditate on the fact that from the point of view of the beings in the lower rebirths, different in rank from us, even the mere fortunate rebirths seem hard to attain, and from the viewpoint of beings in the fortunate rebirths of the same rank too, those with the distinguished freedoms are extremely rare. Then it says, Geshe Döpas laid great emphasis on this. It says, he said that all other dhammas, Dhamma comes about comes about brought on by this. As it is like this, you should make an effort accordingly.
간지 최남다 지역의 상무디 최남다 지역이 아니 조디 단주 된체와 아니 니가와 상비기 아니 냠는 디 돈의 용고위원자 아니 데려야 배바치진 간지 디치고 그랬어. 기시나 디소도스라.
The point that is made at the end of this section in drawing from the statements of Geshe Dolpa, he says that the making of effort in our Dharma practice comes about through recognizing the great advantage that we have when we have freedoms and richnesses, and also understanding how difficult it is to find them. So if you understand the combination of these two, that you have them, and are so difficult to find them, then you become determined to make effort in your spiritual practice.
다 되는 니바는 니세들에 다 랑치 남샤가 니바께봐 대라님불님 뭐 담보는 개우스기 람도 소로 탐진 뒤비츠 개우스기 권에 좀 신도 TV 견전 템보스.
After there's the exhortation of to take the essence of this life, Lama Tsongkhapa explains the way to do it under 2 points. Generating certainty with regards to the general presentation of the path and the actual way of taking its essence. Let's look at generating certainty with regards to the general presentation of the path, which consists of 2 main points. How all the Buddha's teachings are contained in the path of the 3 types of persons, and then giving reasons for gradual guidance from the point of view of the 3 types of persons.
That Tambani is, you know, Tambani Sanji took Gavas. That took Gavas in the Masna, Sanji Tomar Simjan Tamjila ya, maybe 7 inch Chimotron. He told you that Simjan did not turn that any Yahuj Madruna, that's all in Jim going to get them, you can, and it's Tada drip to Alia. Drip to Sanji Convanch Maton, Tom to Gonchini, and Simjan Tamji Cheddar, and Sanji Convan, Devi, and Chanju Sensei, took Yavaras, Thomas took Yavas said.
Beginning with the explanation of how all the Buddha's teachings are contained in the path of the 3 types of persons, we begin with point A, how the meaning of all the scriptures is subsumed under the accomplishments of 2 objectives. And it begins with saying it's everything the Buddha did. In the beginning, the man generation. In the middle, the accumulation of the collections. And at the end, the manifestation of complete Buddhahood was done for the welfare of sentient beings only. We'll read through the rest later on. It begins with saying that what the Buddha did in the beginning was man generation. What it means is that at the very beginning of his spiritual path, the Buddha generated great compassionate love for the sake of all beings, thinking, how can I separate or liberate them from suffering? How can I work for the welfare of other living beings? And he came to the conclusion that without attaining the state of enlightenment, you will not be able to work for the welfare of sentient beings. And therefore, he developed what we call mind generation, or in other words, bodhicitta. This mind that thinks, I will attain the state of enlightenment. It wishes for the state of enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings.
Sanji Komba told Mara, he each other that any give any Sosa Division Chiguenza and Pardu Sosa was here. So the any Jimba children serve some sheriff in Yamindi and Sosa Chok to Kivadi, Tiredas.
In the beginning, the Buddha generated bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. In the middle, he accumulated the collections. which means having generated the mind of complete enlightenment, it's not that simply by generating the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, the state of enlightenment will be attained. On top of generating the mind, the Buddha practiced the 6 perfections. The Buddha practiced generosity and ethical discipline, patience, joyous effort, absorptions, and wisdom. And upon the combination of these perfections, the deeds of those who seek enlightenment, the Buddha was at the end able to attain the state of enlightenment. So through that, the Buddha accumulated vast collections that were required for attaining the state of Buddhahood.
대단지다 남주게 남기다지 배는 주고 비나리 지기 다지가 차세나리 아니 마니타나리 안치 고소토데 샤나리 저소다 아니 먼저 초사 인세고라스 이내야 초사 인다 민디 아니 고노래야 미유래야 라리기도 하스라 안치 수주 개변치 수주 민다 땅다지 아니 세디지 아니 류대고 용야 딘디지래야 미치니 and liu chip and benjo chip tindijle mechin feeling hari chebaine di and simjan tamji tendo sanji to be yele romudus.
So this section refers to accumulating the collections that are needed for attaining the state of enlightenment. And sometimes we speak of different practices that we use in order to gather those collections. So we make offerings, we make prostrations, we do certain recitations of mantras, we do different recitations of prayers, and we consider all those different things to be practices that contribute to the accumulation of the collections. But the main factor is our motivation. First, those practices to contribute to the accumulations of causes that are needed for attaining the state of enlightenment, we need to have the right motivation. In that if we do all those different practices, we do certain recitations, we recite mantras and so forth, but our motivation is to increase things that belong to this life, affairs of this life, such as, for example, we might want to have better reputation, better social standing. We want to be more wealthy, or we want our body to function better. We want it to be healthy. We want it to be stronger and so forth. This orientation that is putting the emphasis on what we can get in this life based upon this body will then render a practice to be a practice that does not contribute to the causes that are required to attain the state of enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings.
심전 통지기 제도 상기 토고거라 토가야 파르 중인디 아니 명문받다 시지드받다 차고를 마도 아니 챵바피게 가서 다지 아니 지 람가 체데 유로다 쇼다 메다 아니 롱 가서 디디칸 레마다스 라 아니 명문받다 시지드비 파르 쪽가자 다디 아니 짱마 소긴기 딜이야 아니 nimbu donging ani dindiji le tomi drogo za sosa ngoma di ani jinso passion to nyamne tires ro.
So when you start to think of the goal, which is to attain the state of Buddhahood for the sake of all living beings, we have things that obstruct our attainments of Buddhahood. We call the things that obstruct our attainment of Buddhahood cognitive obscurations and afflictive obscurations. These to obstruct our attainment of the state of Buddhahood. So for the sake of attaining the state of enlightenment, if this is what we want to do, we want to attain the state of enlightenment for the sake of others, we need to eliminate those obstructions. You can call those obstructions roadblocks on the path to enlightenment. But those roadblocks are not formed in terms of fire and water and floods and so forth. Those roadblocks are obscurations in our own mind stream. And the way to remove those roadblocks is through developing the antidotes to our own set of obscurations. And to develop the antidotes, we practice generosity, patience, joyous effort, absorption, and wisdom, the practice of the six perfections is that which helps us to gather the accumulations for removing the roadblocks on the path to enlightenment.
Terda tar mombo zoba sangiya diang ani simje thamji gi chedo kan chosa che tuge che chosa che tar mombo zoba sangiya de magin sangiya se namazna ani mimumba da shiji jeba samalo a kache duri ton pangya di ani simjing dhendu gi che ro simjing dhendu bo khoni che dres simji khoni dhendu yeme chu songba thamje yang 심진기 그냥 코너 드버치고
So reading through this section, it's everything that the Buddha did. In the beginning, the mind generation. In the middle, the accumulation of the collections. And at the end, the manifestation of complete Buddhahood was done for the welfare of sentient beings only. All these Dhamma teachings also only accomplish the welfare of sentient beings.
Tenzada ani sumjing du ani drubja sumjing dhendeleya ni yungule sumjing ni de nega pigi ngonto dans benam ta padami komboto yelaso ngonto da tardu ngile ra ngile le ya tawda thamji kimi ani kombani yoros di ani di sumjing juleya ani di drubya di ani drubja thatu dichagores.
Since it says here that whatever the Buddha did, the Dhamma teachings that he gave were only to accomplish the welfare of sentient beings, you might then consider, what is the meaning of accomplishing the welfare of sentient beings? As such, there are two ways of fulfilling the welfare, accomplishing the welfare of living beings. It is accomplishing high states of rebirth and accomplishing states of definite goodness, the state of liberation or the state of enlightenment. So whatever the Buddha taught was in order to lead sentient beings either to a high state of rebirth or for the attainment of the states of certain goodness.
Terda dubje gnani gnani ta nekam onto said tangbo ngondu kongbang ya gobu dos ngondu kongbang tijile ya gomatuna ani ngile tawad thamji khemase drug to ye zawni ni yomaros pentang antu thunro ke baina ani song khan tan sing mare ke ji khan yen sing mare tene chedrup said yongya zawni ni dos tin thambo ani chi milli khabar change thobya ya ani lamde chigo dos ra simjele ya.
So the Buddha taught how to attain temporary high states of rebirth and ultimate definite goodness, which means that suppose that we are intent on attaining the state of liberation or enlightenment, which requires a succession of lifetimes in order to do that. If we are born in our future life, in our next life, as not as a human being, but as an animal, which not only cannot speak or cannot converse, but also cannot understand the meaning, we will not have the basis for pursuing states of certain goodness, definite goodness, the state of liberation or the state of enlightenment. So then the Buddha taught means for attaining those temporary states of existence, which means for attaining temporary high states of rebirth, so that we'll be still able to study and practice the Dhamma in order to make a progress along the steps of the path that bring about definite goodness.
Tereda teza thambo penata mundu komba dribi chedu mundu komba thubi chedu simjengi ta chedu che kangsomba thamje ani kewi chung ngosum chung dan thongwi ani che namaya ani sangi ani kewi chung jing chesumgi ani lam sonsha di che sonsha di ani nangi ta kewi chung chu namaya dugres.
Point B in the section that explains how all the Buddha's teachings are contained in the path of the three types of persons begin with saying that in terms of practicing the first, which means attaining a high status rebirth, a high state rebirth, all that was taught is included in the Dhamma cycle of the actual persons of small capacity, or of that in common with the persons of small capacity. So we're looking here at the way of arranging the teachings of the Buddha into the presentation of the steps of the path of enlightenment of the three types of persons, three scopes being. So the teachings that we can use in order to attain higher status rebirth are included within the steps of the path of those of the small scope.
Dudes, give chung caberjeni, send the light, cheche, micheva. Se chimi un torigi punzo tendinesi. Di gyunam dribala, jubiche de lamjane, kanshi tabne kandagi koyodeva zamdala, ani tendinesi, then give kamashi, shesos.
So then, looking at this section, it says, in terms of practicing the first, all that was taught is included in the Dhamma cycle of the actual persons of small capacity, or that in common with a person of small capacity. Special persons of small capacity do not mostly act for the sake of this life, pursuing instead the excellence of high rebirth in future lives and engaging in achieving the causes for that. In the Lamb for the Path of Enlightenment, Atisha says, whoever pursues by any means the happiness of samsara only, just for his own benefit, should be known as the least of being.
Tirda, hinza, tasangi give chung jing chembusums, kanji, ani sangi che nyamsun nengen telaya. 아니 릭송은 수리그레스 개우총 중 침부송나 아니 개우총성인들의 간주고 있으면 제 넷상이야 차대어 많이 봐. 제 넷상 체도 아니 공권 대대어 많이 봐. 개와 치마 아니 온도 타다 미 공방이야. 아니 병이 뒤 줄이야. 중이지 많다고 그랬어.
When the section says that this is the least type of being, we need to understand that from the viewpoint of the presentation of the steps of the path of enlightenment. So in this presentation, three types of beings were explained. In that sense, in English, we call them a small scope being, a medium scope being, and a great scope being. These are the three types of practitioners presented in the steps of the path of enlightenment. So then in terms of who is a small scope being? What type of attitude should you have to be regarded as a small scope being? You need to have the attitude that is not mainly seeking whatever happiness or well-being you seek in this life. If your interest is not what will occur to you in this life, but how you can attain a high status rebirth in your next lifetime, you're regarded as a small scope being, which means that the least type of attitude that you should have, the least of the type of motivation that you should have, shouldn't be concerned with happiness, pleasure, well-being in this life. It should be concerned with attaining a high status rebirth in your next lifetime. If you have that, then that is the least type of attitude to be regarded as a small scope being.
Any chung din chesung give Tommy and a samlot nevaina, samlot dendritic nevaina, and shirt namdadi chagmudas, kanji, and a medichum through song soba. Give a chiming one to be gulet singing pinji mambaina, and shirt namda chagmudas. He marched Nantu Kakalaya, and church chain the penguin sage. Yours, he and 마페야디 슈기 리버메버 마임바 쳬라야 리버메버 마임바 소수기 비 쳬라야 쳬 모마들이야 짝투 메비 긴생기 아니 펜도메버치 이혼되기요 다 세부 슈차고 알았어.
Since here it says that this is the list of the attitude that you should have when you practice the steps of the path of enlightenment, then we need to regard that as the least type of attitude that you need to have in order to practice, for example, ethics in which you abstain from the 10 non-virtues. If you don't have that, bare minimum attitude in which you seek good high status rebirth in your next lifetime, you'll not be practicing the ethical discipline that will be abstaining from the 10 non-virtues, and you will thereby not be practicing a genuine Dharma practice, a real Dharma practice. So then sometimes you or sometimes you yourself or someone else might say that I've been practicing Dharma for some time and it hasn't helped me at all. So then if you think that it hasn't helped me at all, it hasn't helped me so far, Geshe says that actually you need to look at what is the type of motivation that you've had to begin with in your Dharma practice. In that, where you're using your Dharma practice with the least type of motivation that was spoken here in order to pursue a higher status rebirth in your next lifetime, or did you have another orientation in which you were focusing on this lifetime? If your orientation was as such that you thought that your Dharma practice would be mainly used in order to change whatever occurs to you in this lifetime, well, here it says that it's not an actual or genuine Dharma practice.
Diresha dinza benangazuda sanji vi chuchiyus ra sanji jinju yin samsam rus tanganzu yungoras inaya chi ani sanji jinju yin balaya ani sanji la ya thabatsi chi godas sanji la thaba yongin jin bayana ani sanji somba di lanin de tari rasra dinza tanganzu sanji la ya ngesam ta chi gaw yobado chi mato bi thaba yobado 차가연 상선을 까까래라 간선 산지 somebody 라넨탈이요 말 수수 감대버디 수수 감대버 세디야 비기 수수 주지 차단 아니 가르슈체버 디 온도 로샤야도 마토비 텔레 동네 지지니 아니 무연네 주고야 카촌 루투요 말 스티마투디 아니 산지는 대바슈지 예산의 마세나 아니 산지기 깔 찍내기로 차이도스라.
So then sometimes we have that impression of ourselves as if we have strong trust in the Dharma. We regard ourselves as being followers of the Buddha. And we do need to have that single-pointed faith in the Buddha in our spiritual practice, in our Dharma practice. But then when you look at what the Buddha said, if we have that deep faith and trust in the Buddha, then we should also pay attention to what the Buddha said. And the Buddha said, put it into practice. So then if we think that I have deep trust in the Buddha, single-pointed faith in the Buddha, and yet rather than putting the teachings into practice, we just do what our anger tells us to do. We do what our attachment tells us to do. We are completely led around by our own afflictive states of mind. Is it really the case that we have deep sense of trust in what the Buddha said? Is it really the case that we have faith in the Buddha? Because if we had faith in the Buddha, we would have put those things into practice as the Buddha instructed them. We would not be kind of willingly be led around by our own afflictive states of mind. So there's one question that I sent here at Zoom. It says, as Geshe mentioned that attachment and anger are from ignorance, and to meditate on the wisdom realizing emptiness is the key. So I've been studying and meditating on emptiness for a few years. I've recently realized that I have the tendency to fall into nihilism. Don't really want to work and do daily activities, etc. I know these are not signs of renunciation. I want to ask that how we're still in the world, how we can still be in the world and practice enough to reach enlightenment. Tila chiwa tinendi kalla gyores 그런 차단기 심한디 몸바로 와라. 아니 차단 몬숨 차단 몬숨 매버스야라. 아니 돈이 또 뱉다오데 깨고 와. 아니 그런 돈이 돌아 로카시 신라 lobchen cheyus, samlo tandegiyus, Tadi pagachila Quran legachiala tan jiktembe chadila jegi duva shida ligindusa. Sometimes the sim dila khasa jiktembe chadila sentes nyugidusa. Ta Quran de ngenjun ke insen lagi mesa. Dila ngenjun ke tsema ta tsema dini junyo mares. Ine data la sanata waina Quran mitse dila da de ngaso zambolin dila lega chegi jawa chegi yan di chapchi du chanchu gi lam du rimba dwa la khande chego res sunde khande chego res jikten gi jawa lega chea peshe kuna mitsan so adene le yomare ne jikten be chawa le waina lega chewaina ane di kapsula yan nyamlen puta de chetan khande chinas
다 계란기 동번이 로마무가 상도다니 지긴비 차와치야들이야 냠망데 송세비 something cuisines.
No. So first off, one of the things that was said here in this question, that they've been studying and meditating on emptiness for a few years, and they've also lost some interest in worldly activities, daily activities, going to work and so forth. So losing some of the interest that we have in worldly activities, Geshe says that he has deep appreciation for that, in a sense that if you meditate on emptiness, if you study emptiness, meditate on that, and then the glamour of these worldly activities starts to fall apart, Geshe has a sense of respect to that.
Shimadras, Amatavadras, the D Gonjin, Lutu Yavsel Sobi, Shon, and Ladan Tanamanta, Lamrim Drogan, Lamrim Sombo, Jangon, Sungavichi, Tavi message, yours. The Dinjin Tolaya can test it. Lobjun Chetubaina, and it Lam Kandachik Tony, Tautan, how we give and can go to this.
And Geshe recommends continuing with what you've been doing so far. In that, of course, the main thing that we rely upon are the teachings of the Buddha, but on top of that, the writings of the Indian masters, such as, for example, the writings of Nagarjuna pertaining to the way to develop the philosophical view. And on top of that, you have the writings of Lama Tsongkhapa that composed not only commentaries on the writings of Nagarjuna and Chindakirti, he composed 5 great treatises on the philosophical views. So Geshe reckons that a good approach to continuing with that would be to make sure that in whatever you do, you still continue with increasing your understanding of the type of reasoning that you develop in order to come to the conclusion with respect to the philosophical view.
That the Tetsamgi, and Tavi given ye 2 wrestlers, whom give Tamba to Zugi, Namter Gion, ye 2 mudas. Telea 2 di, and Sosa Drubjanki, Yatensin go, that 2 Sosa Drubjanki, 2 di, and Ninji than Chanju Sem Gomiala Soba. Teni Yan Kishichilea, Rangi Zavi Lamatan. And Yawadoji Chancelam, Jizun Jambian, and Jangola Musungo Chimbo, won't you David Tony, and Teba Joyet, a massive kitchen chavores, that Dinji Tony Kara, and Sosa to Janki, and Gab Chovas Chomana, can David Tolly and Nivan Yus. Yungoras, that did whom give them some layer, Nanzol, the Chevan, Nanzol Yungoras.
But then simply continuing with your studies and thinking that just doing that would be enough to generate the type of understanding that I need to have in order to realize the philosophical view is not going to be enough. When you look at the life stories of the great masters of the past, in all of them, there are indications that just studying academic study was not enough. You also need to accumulate the collections. You need to purify negativities and obscurations, which are the support, the basis for developing realizations of the philosophical view. So also in continuing with whatever you've been doing, also make sure that you include elements of accumulating the collections, purifying negativities and obscurations. And of the key factors for accumulating the collections is the faith and trust that you have in your spiritual teacher, your root Lama. So in terms of accumulating the collections, you see from the great masters of the past that developing compassion, developing bodhicitta boosts up your accumulation of the collections. And also having that deep sense of trust and faith in your spiritual teacher, seeing them as inseparable from, for example, Vajradhara. Or when you look at great beings, great masters of the past, like Lama Tsongkhapa, who came to see his teachers being inseparable in essence from Manjushri, is also a key point in building up this store of accumulations, purifying negativities and obscurations that are required in order to generate those spiritual realization. And without that, they will not occur.
College yum jigden bashani and di chedu and chudru ya jigden bigi tandaros hindi samdana jigden bilega sedianko and chuton samdan jigdos di mahin by karan kimdam do sonche and jig rangi shimbing negachin drochin di chela goya kanda chigor slavana the di pishi jumaros tarwa.
Then you also mentioned that in doing that, sometimes kind of you lose the wish or the desire to work or to take part in certain daily activities. So we have to get by in this world. If you need to go to work, there are certain attitudes that you can develop in general, even when you would take up a certain job, a worldly job. For example, some of the things that we do are offering service to others, taking care of living beings or sentient beings in general. So since part of the work market is based on offering service to others, then if you think about it, still it would be considered to be a general type of work, but you can still think about it in terms of offering service to others. So you can that's one thing that you can think of in relation to going to work. But then there are also other things that we do in the world, like, for example, if you get involved with certain types of jobs or business in which your goal is to obtain a profit and to do better than your competitors. So in that sense, kind of you want to win and other needs to be losing. Or you think that, I want to have a relationship, I want to have children and so forth. It's hard to transform these activities to be Dharma practices. Now, so there's some types of worldly activities which we can then transform to be Dharma activities if we have the right attitude. But some other types of worldly activities are very difficult to be transformed into Dharma practices. Thank you. Dila bachola de himen de tsizi chenbochi kedwa. So we also have a guest appearance in our session today. So we have a big rat, which is very cute. And Geshe said that maybe we can do the blessing now. So do you want to bring it over? What's his name? Lani. Mani. Is his name or her name?
His name.
His name. All right. Then I guess that was coming. He got more than what he was asking for. This is uber cute. She could do it.
Doesn't run away.
No, he'll sit in the robes. Very interesting.
You're right, he's judged up now. Rats.
Safe madam.
He's going for a Cora. For a run. Oh, it's probably behind. Langolve. All right, maybe you can.
There you go.
Oh, there he goes. So cute, eh? Money.
Oh, that's
All right.
Did you go right there?
Thank you.
Oh. Oh, lucky rat.
All right. Thank you very much. So let's do the dedication prayers. All right. Where is it? Just okay.
May the precious
Print is not risen, it rises and grows. Amid that which is arisen, not diminish, but increase more and more. With these merits of these virtuous actions, might quickly attain this state of the Guru Buddha, and lead all living beings without exceptions into that enlightened state. Do we do that?
Yes.
All right. The wish granting, wish fulfilling jewels, source of everything. To the very God, dancing Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Save us, knowledge, my greater beings, make extremely clear the path to lotus hold and thanking Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Positively moral sense and bountiful birth, all sustaining, preserving, spreading, imaginative, victorious doctrine, masterful accomplishment, myths and praise, honoring the spirituals. Thank you. Please. Thank you, people.
Thank you.
No. ¿Cómo la sí.
Sí.
It's a lunch set.
Pardon?
Do we have lunch today at the cafe?
Oh, I don't think so.
All right.
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. Maybe.
Maybe what?
Some nothing. Yeah. Yes, it's going down. Yeah. Yeah, it's going down. It's a Buddhist statue, if you're interested.
Oh.
Well, no, it's a mongoose.
Yeah, you went down to
You were there.
Oh, was it tilted all around or is it just now?
Yeah, no, it's been up the whole time.
Oh,
That cartoon.
It's all right, you could see it.
well, from my angle, it looks straight.
Oh, that's perfect. I just heard the story.
Those are cute rats.
It was a cute rat. Gosh, very tame rat. I mean, gosh, a cat would run away.
Yeah.
And then a rat would normally run away, but not this time. Amazing. So you have to, oh, yes. There are things in my nose. The two. Right, have fun. I was just going to correct you. Yeah, I talked to Eddie. I talked to everything.
I used to answer situations. So I don't know if she may not come. And then central electricity. Oh, gotcha. But then well, going to now to these Did you say Geshe?
Yeah, Geshe went down.